Back once again with the Kaufman Corner podcast with you, as always, the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City, talking MLB Draft, talking Royals Draft as it has wrapped up. What do we give them grade-wise? We'll talk about that. Their top picks seem to be taking up all the money. Cameron Millar, whom they got in the third round, the fourth player taken, apparently changing their entire approach to day two of the draft. What do we think of day two of the draft? Michael Lorenzen going down. Does that change whatever the Royals' plans might have been regarding this second half? We're talking about it right here, right now on the Kaufman Corner podcast.
You're listening to the Kaufman Corner podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany on the Royals, and a former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by David Starnes Allstate Insurance, covering all the important things in your world. Home, business, life, and even the fun stuff as well. Motorcycle, boat, ATV, you name it, get with Dave and he'll have you covered. Give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave today. He'll give you peace of mind for the things in your life most important to you. And now, here are your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. Off and running here with another edition of the Kaufman Corner. Rany, just overall thoughts. Do you want to start there? What's your reaction to the Royals draft? Were you giddy with excitement when pick 23 rolled around and they went high school shortstop?
So last year was Brian Bridges, debut, his grand introduction to the Royals and the fan base. And, it was clear from the beginning he was willing to take big swings, both figuratively and literally, because Jack Caglione has one of the biggest swings we've ever seen. And here, 12 months later, the draft looks like a potential watershed moment in the sense of the team had a new scouting director, and after 4 or 5 years of really disappointing drafts, at least the first 3 picks are all chugging away at a really good pace. Caglione's in the majors. David Shields is pitching well as an 18-year-old. Drew Beam is pitching very well in his first pro season. So to me, this year was important in the sense of, was that just a fluke, or does Brian Bridges and all of the expectations we put on him, because he comes with a very good pedigree coming from, experience with the Braves, experience with other organizations, could he repeat that? And my conclusion at this point, again, we just know the players' names. They haven't taken the field yet. I'm excited. I'm optimistic. It feels like a Brian Bridges draft. This is the kind of draft where he's aiming for upside. He's willing to take big swings. But he's not, like, none of the picks that the Royals made you scratch your head and be like, what are they thinking? There are no Frank Mazzucatos in this draft pool, right? There wasn't a second round pick taken on a high school pitcher who throws hard but has no idea where the ball is going. And the Royals have done so much of that over the years. And there are guys in their minor league system, some of them already washed out. Ben Hernandez was a second round pick. You think about Blake Wolters and all of the hype with him before Brian, in a pre-Brian Bridges era, and how poorly some of those picks have panned out 3, 4, 5 years later. There was none of that this year. Sean Gamble was not the top guy on my list when the Royals drafted at 23.
Who was? Let's start there.
So there were 2 or 3 guys I really thought you had dropped. I'm a big fan of taking guys who've established themselves as potential top 5, top 10 picks going into their junior year. But when you're drafting in the 20s, you're looking for a guy like that who drops because for whatever reason he had an off season as a college junior. but the tools are still there. Maybe he had a little injury concern. So there were a couple of guys. Jace Laviolette was a potential 1-1 guy a year ago. And the power was there, the plate discipline was there, but his batting average cratered. He hit 258, I think, as a college junior. And college players who hit under 300 would almost never go in the first round. But like, it was a very high risk, high upside kind of pick. But he was a possibility. He didn't quite. I think he made it to like 22, and they didn't get him. But Wahiwa Aloy, who's a Hawaiian native who played at Oregon State and was considered by many to be like a top 15 player, he was out there. Cruz Schoolcraft, who we both love because of the name.
Yep.
A left-handed monster, 6'8", out of high school, was there. So there were a couple of guys I was looking at. Gamble was in that next tier down. I'm a little concerned because the power tool really isn't there yet. He's a hit over power guy at this point. He's already 19 years old. There were a few things that concerned me about him, but I didn't hate the pick. And I looked at picks 23 and 28 as a pair, because when you draft that close together, it's impossible to look at any one draft pick in isolation because of the draft pool, because every pick, what matters is how much money you're spending on it. Every dollar you save on a pick here is a dollar you can spend later in the draft. So I didn't want to evaluate 23 too much until I saw 28. And 28 was Josh Hammond, and I loved that pick. Like, I would have loved to have had him at 23, to be perfectly honest. So to get him at 28 really kind of justified what they did with Gamble at 23. I'll be very curious to see, actually, which of those two gets a higher bonus. I think they're both going to be big bonus guys. They both have leverage as high school players. But I also really like the idea of going for upside with two high school hitters in a draft where most of the guys going in the top 20 were college guys. And yet the consensus from a lot of the scouting departments was that the college talent was a little down this year. And, if you're drafting a 23 and you have the chance of getting, I don't know, the 15th best college player or the 8th best high school player, I'm not sure exactly what the ratios were, but somewhere close to that. Yeah, I might be leaning more towards the high school guy who, might flop. But when you've got 5 picks in the first top 100, I'll take a risk that 1 or 2 flop if I can get 2 or 3 actual stars out of that group. And I think between Gamble and Hammond, one of those guys is likely to become an above average everyday player in the major league. So I'm excited about that.
I think Gamble is probably signability. I mean, I see one list that had him at like 48, one list that had it, he looks like the signability part of the equation to then, some of that money is going to be used to get Josh Hammond signed.
Mm-hmm.
And then that they were planning on sprinkling around somewhere later on in the draft. And we can, we'll get to Cameron Millar here in a minute. But I mean, I do like that they kind of, they did go bat. Now, generally speaking, when you're talking top 10, you always want to go bat. There wasn't an arm at this point. The Cruz Schoolcraft we talked about because he's 6'8", but there wasn't any other arm that you thought was, the route to go.
Right. Yeah, I mean, high school arms are always risky, right? Like, you have to have a real, like, as much as I would have liked him there, there's a reason why he dropped to 25, I think, in the Padres. And he fits. He's a classic AJ Preller pick in San Diego because he loves upside as much as anybody. And I totally get passing on that. I will say, I just did the numbers. Actually, I take it back. Gamble was actually the 12th. When the Royals were picking, there were 11 high school and 11 college players taken. So I think that consensus got around that. Like, in previous years, there were years where there were only 5 guys out of high school taken in the top 20 picks, and this year was not like that. But still, given the options on the board, Laviolette was there. He was taken 1 pick before Hammond with the Royals' 2nd pick. But they could have taken Laviolette. I get why they didn't do it because, again, these pieces have to fit together, and Laviolette was probably going to take a lot more money than Gamble will get. But so let's look at Gamble. Gamble, there's a couple things here that concern me. A couple things that I really like. He's played a lot of second base in high school, which can be a concern because if a guy plays on the dirt and he's not a shortstop, how good is his defense? But
Right.
Considered a very good defensive second baseman. But the talk before the draft was that he could move to the outfield, and the Royals announced him as an outfielder. And I like that part of it because he's an excellent runner, 70 grade runner. And so that's a guy who could put in center field, develop him as a center fielder. He doesn't have great power yet. I know that Keith Law wrote about a concern that his swing will need to be adjusted to account if he's going to develop power. But the hit tool is already there, so he can hit for a good average. He's got very good speed, potentially really good defense in center field, even though he's converting from second base. This is going to sound strange, but that scouting report, who it kind of reminds me of, albeit Gamble is a better version of this, because the guy I'm thinking of, the Royals took in the third round a couple years back. He sounds like a souped up version of Kyle Isbell, who was a second baseman in college, moved to the outfield, and turned into an elite defensive center fielder. Not great power, and the hit tool never really emerged with Kyle Isbell, but that was sort of the dream with him. If Kyle Isbell was a 280, 290 hitter consistently, he'd be in a top 10 center fielder in baseball. Even without that, his defense is so good that he's about an average center fielder. But Sean Gamble, I think the idea is maybe he doesn't develop power. Maybe he never hits more than 8 to 10 home runs a year. But if he can hit 280 to 300 in the major leagues with really good defense, steal 25, 30 bases a year in center field, that's a potential leadoff type hitter with your first pick. And then the hope, I think, is that Josh Hammond becomes the middle of the order bat. And potentially even a better player than Gamble. If you can hit on both of those guys and they both become everyday players, even if they're not stars, that's a really good first round when you consider you're not drafting in the top 20.
Matt says, so Rany, you're saying we drafted a potential number 9 hitter?
Well, the difference between a number 9 and a number 1 hitter is just a matter of, consistency. And I think I'm saying he's a better version of what Kyle Isbell is. But Kyle Isbell is not an insult. And I think that's the thing that people have to accept. Kyle Isbell's actually a pretty good player. And if Kyle Isbell developed his hit tool even a little bit more, he wouldn't be a number 9 hitter. He frankly, he could be a leadoff hitter if his batting average was 30 points higher, his on base was 40 points higher.
I remember something about my aunt and being my uncle.
Yeah, I've heard this one from you before.
Yeah, okay.
Well, the point is he's a first-round pick, not a third-round pick. And he's a high school guy, not a college guy. So he has time to develop those skills. But my point is, maybe we shouldn't worry too much about him developing power and just worry about him being the best version of himself, which is a guy who can hit for good average, hit doubles and triples in the gap, take advantage of his speed, and play really good defense.
Well, did you hear anything about these guys being really good at recognizing the strike zone? Because I didn't. High school guys, is very hard to gauge that from afar. That I guess I take it on faith a little bit that if you're developing a guy with a leadoff profile, that he has to have some knowledge of the strike zone. But yes, these are the Royals. We have to always be concerned about that, and that's something we're going to have to monitor very closely when they start their professional careers. Yeah, I look. They sounded really Royalish. I mean, they sounded, athlete. I mean, Keith Law, so on Gamble is a 70 runner with above average bat speed, probably needing to move to center field and pro ball, who will need some swing help to tap into more power. He's more athlete than hitter right now, with a flatter swing that doesn't loft the ball a ton and tends to open his front hip early, so he doesn't always square the ball up like he should. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't sound great, right? But he didn't have, and he had Gamble, I want to say 30, was it 40, 48th or something on his list. So he had him below, where the Royals took him. But Hammond was a lot closer, and Keith Law, was not as high on him as some other guys were. Kylie McDaniel had Gamble at 35th on his list, but Kylie McDaniel, the Josh Hammond. Let's talk about the Josh Hammond pick. 'Cause to me, okay, Gamble in isolation. Again, if I were to give just Gamble a grade, I'd probably give it a C or a C plus. But the Hammond pick, I absolutely love. Why? So this is a guy, Hammond, also a high school player, a little bit younger. He'll be 19 in September. He's not young for his draft class, but he's not terribly old. But he was essentially a two-way guy in high school. He has had a lot of draft interest as a pitcher. If he wasn't an elite hitter, I mean, he probably would have gone in the top 3 rounds as a pitcher. He's going to be a hitter as a pro. And this is, again, classic Brian Bridges. You think about taking Caglione. Take an athlete who's shown two-way ability and then allow him to focus on just one of those two ways. And, allow him to, instead of having to distribute his time. There's only one Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani can be elite at both. Most guys,
if they focus on one part of the field, they're going to be better at that one part than they were when they were trying to distribute their time equally between pitching and hitting. Hammond, so let me read you. Kylie McDaniel had him 17th on his list. Again, the Royals took him 28th. But the quote he had here, and this is from his ESPN pre-draft preview. Hammond is my third pound the table player, right? Behind Willits and Fine. That's Eli Willits, who went shockingly number 1 overall, and Gavin Fine, who was ranked by most people in the 20s, but the Rangers took 12. So the other two guys that were his pound the table players ended up going like a lot higher than maybe the scouting consensus was, because other teams maybe saw what Kylie was seeing. So it's interesting that the Royals were able to get Hammond where they did. So here's what he wrote about him. There are some teams picking in the 20s that are very interested, while some have no interest and they're spottier interest in the teams. He looked like a young Austin Riley last summer as a standout, right-handed, two-way talent who wasn't getting much position player scouting attention because at the time he was looked at as mostly a pitcher, but outperformed others who were. This spring, he slimmed down, got stronger, and looked like prime Josh Donaldson with 65 or 70 grade raw power, a solid shortstop glove, and limited range that will likely slide him over to third base. Hammond visually looked like a power over hit type with his adjustment, and his spring was just okay, but in large part because he faced awful pitching. Hammond was up to 97 on the mound, but he goes on about his pitching stuff, but he basically says you're a summer performer who got even toolsier, but didn't give scouts the spring look they wanted, even though he's still the same guy, if not better than he was in the summer. And I've heard the Austin Riley comp from a lot of different sources. And I saw a side-by-side video of their swing. And look, I am no Kevin Seitzer, but like the swings look identical. Like it's really kind of eerie. And Austin Riley, as you probably know, the Braves took him. He, at age 22, 23, 24, he had back-to-back 6-win seasons. And then had a bit of an off year last year. He's performed okay this year. But the point is, Austin Riley turned into a star. Josh Donaldson obviously was like, MVP. Like Josh Donaldson's amazing. But let's just stick with the Austin Riley comp. Where was Austin Riley drafted? Atlanta. Who was in Atlanta at the time when working in the scouting department? Brian Bridges, right? Like, I don't think this is
Brian Bridges.
Brian Bridges, right? I don't think it's a coincidence, right? Like Austin Riley is a really interesting comp because nobody thinks of Austin Riley as a pitcher now, but in high school, he was scouted very highly in that role. The Braves drafted him, put him at third base, said, focus on hitting. He turned into a monster. Hammond has that same potential. And I think to get him at 28 it's quite possible the Royals kind of pushed him down by telling him this is what we'll pay you, make sure, nobody else drafts you because they're not going to give you as much money, and then possibly worked out a below slot deal with Gamble. We'll talk about it. The other thing is, of course, is that they may have just gone over slot on all these guys and then paid for it today because their draft after the first 5 picks today was a whole bunch of signability guys. There was nobody they were taking today that was highly ranked. And so I think we're going to see a lot of these 4th through 10th round guys signed for below slot money, freeing up money for the other guys.
Yeah, we can talk about what Bridges had to say about Cameron Millar. We'll do it after you hear from our friends at David Starnes Allstate Insurance. David Starnes Allstate Insurance, serving the Kansas City area and all throughout the Midwest. With David Starnes Allstate, it's not just about fender benders. Beyond traditional safeguards, enjoy perks like roadside assistance for unexpected breakdowns, transportation expense coverage when your car is in the shop, auto replacement protection to keep you on the road in style, and much more. You can give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty, Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. All right, let's talk about Cameron Millar and the decision to take him. Bridges said in the post-day one draft interview that thrilled to get him, but we're going to have to adjust our plan. We're thrilled to get him to agree, right? I think that was one of the things, to agree to, so they've already got the numbers pretty much worked out. Like, hey, you going to go for this? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, we've got him. But he said we're going to have to, as you kind of alluded to beforehand, we're going to have to adjust what we do tomorrow, that tomorrow being today, and load it up with guys that are 4-year college players, right? That's really what they do. There's only a handful of guys that you would say look like they kind of belonged in their slot, right? I mean, so this really does look like it's about a 5 to 7 player draft, right?
I mean, it's basically a 5-player draft because, like you said, that 5th player, Cameron Millar, their 3rd-round pick, he was a real pop-up guy. As a high school pitcher, but a guy who was throwing 92 last summer and was getting up to 97 before the draft. And so if you look at like draft ranking pools and things like that, he seems like a bit of an overdraft. He was taken, I think, at the 97th pick, but like most rankings had him in the 100, 150 range. Though, once you get down that low, like those, they are not quite as precise. And a lot of times you'll see a guy who's, like I said, a pop-up guy who's, as they say, has a lot of helium and his stock is rising right before the draft, who gets popped a lot sooner than you would think from the rankings, but it actually makes a lot of sense afterwards. If I recall, Daniel Lynch, I mean, I know he hasn't had a great career, but Daniel Lynch was a guy going into the draft. A lot of these rankings had him as like a 4th, 5th round guy. And the Royals popped him when they did because down the stretch, the last month of the season, his stuff really ticked up at, I think, Virginia. And, he was a top prospect in the minor leagues. So like that certainly can work. And I think Millar, he just turned 18 in May. He's actually quite young for his draft class. And that makes me a little more optimistic of the sense of that his pop-up stuff is real. Like a guy who's almost 19 and is throwing harder, that's great, but he's less likely to sustain that or certainly to build on it. Whereas a guy who was 17 barely 17 last summer and turned 18 only during the season and is throwing harder seems much more likely to sustain it and potentially have even more left in the tank. So clearly the Royals really like this guy. They did not expect to be able to add him to their spoils, and to get him as the 5th guy on, in their draft pool was worth, I don't want to say tanking the rest of the draft, but yeah, focusing on a bunch of senior signings. I mean, their 4th round pick, their first pick today, they took a senior guy who's already 22 years old. And they really didn't, unlike previous years where you'll take a couple of top 5 or 6 round players who drop at the very end of the draft and hope that they can save some, scrounge up some money and give that guy an overslot deal. There was nothing like that in today's picks. I think they just decided this guy was worth it. And I can't say they're wrong because for all the guys that the Royals have taken late in drafts in previous years, you think about Austin Charles, you think about Luca Tresh, the catcher. Like, some of these guys are interesting, but none of these guys have moved the needle yet. None of these guys are looking to be impact major leaguers or maybe even make the major league. So like if you have a chance to get an impact major leaguer in the 3rd round, that might be worth tanking the rest of your draft. But I do think this is a 5-man draft. We can talk about the other 2 guys, but Millar, it's again, upside play. If it were someone other than Brian Bridges drafting him, I probably wouldn't be quite as optimistic. I think with Bridges' track record, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt here. And, it's a 3rd round pick. You're not blowing a 1st round pick on a high school arm. If this doesn't work out, it's unfortunate, but it's not a disaster.
And Michael Lombardi was one of the guys mentioned by Keith Law.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Royals is one of his day ones that he liked what they got.
Mm-hmm.
And he mentioned Lombardi and being exclusively a pitcher and what that would do. So, there are a lot of people liked what the Royals did, right?
Oh yeah, I mean Keith Law, even though again he wasn't a huge Sean Gamble guy. After the draft, he ranked 4 teams that his 4 favorite draft classes. He ranked. He had the Cardinals, he had the Orioles. With the Orioles, mind you, who traded for another first round pick with the Rays a couple days before the draft and had, I believe, the highest draft pool in Major League history. So the Orioles were working with some cash. He liked their draft. He liked the Red Sox. And he liked the Royals. He said, finally, Kansas City had a great trio to start off its draft with two big upside plays in Sean Gamble at 2, a slight reach for me, but because I think the probability is lower, and Josh Hammond at 28, followed by two-way player Michael Lombardi as a pitcher at 61. And Lombardi, I know some guys who are absolutely thrilled. I mean, he was at Tulane. He didn't just two-way. He played multiple positions. I think he was like catcher, first base, second base. And then he was mostly a reliever, but also did start. And a lot of teams were talking about him as being one of their favorite kind of reliever to starter transitions. And no, not that they're in any way comparable, but when you think about what the Royals did with Seth Lugo, or how they took a guy who's been a reliever his entire career and had the willingness to think outside the box and say, we can take this 80 inning, a season guy, and the guy just had 120 innings or whatever with the Padres, and turn him into a 200 inning a season guy. There are teams that look at the repertoire of a pitcher might be mostly a reliever and say, you know what, that can work in the rotation. And if we can turn him into a starter, that's a steal. And if you can't, guess what? He's probably a late inning reliever anyway. And that's not the worst thing in the world with your third pick. Lombardi, his fastball average velocity, 93, 94, but he has a lot of lift to it. And it has a lot more rise than the average fastball. And we know the Royals like that. Fastballs that rise, and his curveball is very good. So I think there's a lot to like for a guy who's now going to focus solely on pitching, not have to worry about playing the field again. Just like him, and no longer has to worry about pitching and will only hit. This guy's going to stop hitting and only pitch. And a guy who potentially can turn into a 6 inning starter guy instead of just a 2 inning reliever guy. I think there's a lot of upside with that pick as well. There's some risk, but it's an upside pick, really. The only high floor, low ceiling guy they took in the top 5 was their 4th pick, Justin Lampkin, who's a kind of a crafty lefty, although I saw some Chris Bubich comparisons to him when he was in high school. But he went to Texas A&M, decent control guy. Noah Cameron might be a better comp at this point. Like, he doesn't throw terribly hard, but is I don't think was a signability guy by any means. I mean, he's a good prospect, but they mixed up the upside, the risk reward pool a little bit and took just a safer guy there. But the other 4 of their first 5 picks are all guys who have potential, star potential.
So why do you like upside? Right? Like we had grown tired of the Dayton Moore approach, which was always to take upside. Bubba Starling, the upside. Now it's just somebody different saying it, but it's the same speech. Like before, everyone was tired of the high school guys and wanted college guys, wanted guys that were quicker to the big leagues. Like we basically just, I always say this, no matter what anybody calls to say that they're complaining about or what they want differently, what they're really saying is win, right? Get the right guy in a draft is really what everybody's saying.
Right.
This is what they're saying is no different than what Dayton Moore used to say, especially the early years of his drafting.
I mean, look, it's a simplistic answer, but what you're saying is basically right. The difference is, I think they may be drafting the right guys now. Like, for all Dayton Moore said about upside, Bubba Starling was like, they didn't even account for the fact that he was like 19 and played high school in the Kansas City area. No offense, but like, it wasn't like he was playing against the best talent in the.
But until you got to the high school part, you might as well have been talking about Sean Gamble because he's old.
Yeah, and that's why he's probably my least favorite of these 5 picks. Right, I agree. I do think that hit tool matters most. Like especially when I'm looking at older players, you know all the power in the world, all the speed in the world, but if you don't have the hit tool, you're not going to make contact consistently enough. You're not going to be able to take advantage of your power. You're not going to be able to take advantage of your speed if you're not on base. You're not going to be able to take advantage of power if you don't make contact, right? So the fact that Gamble seems to have a good hit tool, that was the thing with Bubba. Like, Bubba, incredible power, run like the wind, incredible cannon arm. Even when he was drafted, the hit tool was iffy. And it was ultimately his inability to make consistent hard contact that torpedoed his career and didn't allow him to take advantage of all the other gifts, because the other gifts were there. I mean, he could play good defense. He did have a good arm, right? He could run, but he could not hit, and there's no substitute for that. So when you take a high school hitter, he's got to be able to hit. I think there's a better, I'm not even say better probability of gamble than Starling, but for taking him 23rd versus the 5th overall pick, I think that it's a worthwhile gamble. No pun intended.
Yeah. No, I listen. I'm with you. And I think it does matter who's saying it to you.
Yeah,
right? That's part
100%.
of it. Like Bridges, Jack Caglione is a hell of a start right now. First time out of the gate, and I think there's an element of in Bridges we trust, right? Veach has got some wins, so Brett Veach says it. Chiefs fans say, and Veach we trust. Well, Jack Caglione's a pretty good start. You throw together another good draft with it.
The length of the track records between Brian Bridges and Brett Veach, slight difference there, right? 1 year, and that's what I'm saying. It's 1 year, although he has good track record from before joining Kansas City.
He's change. He represents change.
Yes.
That's a positive. So that's almost like 1 year under his belt. And then year 2 is Jack Caglione, so it's almost like year 3. So he's got some street cred with Royals.
I will say the gamble, the Gamble pick was not my favorite, but to me, if Gamble comes out of the gate or next year when he's first full pro season and exceeds expectations and really puts on a show at the plate, that will be in my mind the biggest feather in Bridges' cap yet. The biggest sign that he really does understand this whole how to play the draft game, because Gamble is a gamble. There are some, I don't want to say red flags, but some yellow flags here.
Yeah.
And to take him where he did, it could blow up in his face. So if it doesn't, and he actually is right about Gamble, I'll have even that much more confidence in Bridges the next time, he takes a controversial player or a player who has some, some risk in the first round.
Let's talk a little bit about where these new draft picks would fit into the Royals prospects. We'll do it right after you hear from our friends at Whataburger. Your favorites are back. Kansas City now for a limited time at all your KC Whataburger locations. Get the Pico de Gallo burger, 2 large beef patties, 2 slices of pepper jack cheese, Pico de Gallo, and creamy cilantro lime. How about the sweet and spicy bacon burger? 2 large beef patties, American and Monterey Jack cheese, bacon, grilled onions, and topped with sweet and spicy pepper sauce. Or grab the patty melt. Even the honey barbecue chicken strip sandwich. They're all perfect with the Whataburger banana pudding shake. Remember, Whataburger's open 24 hours a day. Breakfast served 11 p. to 11 a. And don't forget, you can get all your Whataburger favorites and more by downloading the Whataburger app with the QR code. Whataburger, proud sponsor of the Kaufman Corner podcast. Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, serving KC for more than 40 years, voted Kansas City's #1 accident lawyers, helping people with serious injuries from car accidents, work accidents, falls, and other personal injuries. Northland Injury Law doesn't get paid unless they get money for their client. Don't wait, get compensated now. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222, or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. Rany, we know that when a team drafts high, like next year's prospect list going in will almost always be topped by whoever the most recent draft pick is. Royals weren't drafting high this year. No. So where are you slotting in right now these draft picks as the top ones into the Royals rankings? And or does it even matter, because right now there's graduating up Caglione and Noah Cameron and disappointing seasons for a number of pitchers. The list is not hard to crack.
All right. Well, I mean, that's the first thing, right? The problem is that the Royals farm system is it's not going to rate highly at the end of the year, I don't think. Now, keep in mind, at the beginning of the year, it wasn't clear Jack Caglione would lose his rookie eligibility. And technically he hasn't yet. His next game he will. He's 129 at bats. With 2 more at bats, he'll no longer qualify. So we're assuming he's out. And when you think of it this way, the Royals' best hitting prospect coming into the season, Jack Caglione, is no longer a prospect because he's in the major leagues. Their best pitching prospect, Noah Cameron, no longer a prospect. He's in the major leagues. And I would argue that the Royals' best relief prospect before the season, Steven Cruz, also not eligible because he's in
Yeah,
the
but
major
that
league.
but that happens every year to every team.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't always happen that your best, because a lot of times your best prospect is in A ball or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's unusual to have all those guys be close to the majors and make it. And my point is, to their credit, they're in the major leagues. Two of the three are thriving. Cameron's had one of the best first halves of a rookie pitcher in recent memory. I think I think I saw the stat of pitchers who made their debut that season and made at least 10 starts by the All-Star break. He has like the sixth lowest ERA since 1969 in the expansion era. 2.31 ERA. It's phenomenal. All right, Noah Cameron's been better than we could have expected. I did not expect him to be this good. I don't expect him to be this good going forward, but he is he has a better future in my mind today than he did in March, for certain. But the point is, fine, those guys are graduated, so we'll cut them a little bit of slack. But having said that, right now the best prospect in the system, I think maybe I was just a year ahead of my time. I think the consensus will come around to Carter Jensen being that guy, and Carter Jensen is actually really turned it on here in AAA after struggling those first couple of weeks. So his OPS in AAA, I think, is over 1,000 at the moment? I mean, he's really. I think he's a legitimate number one prospect in a farm system. Like, there's still some risk here, but a catcher hitting the way he is and who just turned 22 the other day, that's exciting. After
so you're saying Cal Raleigh?
Hey, I'm still rooting for poor man's Darryl Porter over here. Like, that's still my comp for him. The problem is, who is number two? I think just by default, it's probably Blake Mitchell right now. Right, but and fine, give Blake Mitchell a pass for the fact that he got hit by a pitch and broke his hamate bone in spring training. He just reported to A-ball like earlier this week after some stints in the complex league. But still, in 24 plate appearances in A-ball, he struck out 11 times. Right, he has 3 hits, all 3 extra base hits, but still, he's got 11 strikeouts and 24 plate appearances in A-ball. He turns 21 in a month. Like, there's definitely some risk here. The swing and miss is not good. That needs to improve. But I'm gonna say for now he's at number 2. Here's the thing. After that, I could make a very compelling case that the next 3 or even 4 guys. Actually, I have a right here. I could argue the next 5 guys on the list prior to the draft are all 20 and younger. Like, you could argue Asbel Gonzalez, who we've talked about a lot on this podcast, could rank as highly as number 3 because he's only 19 years old. He has classic leadoff skills. He's not hitting great. His OBP is down to like 376 in A-ball, but he's 19. I think he's stolen 61 bases. He's on pace to break the Royals' all-time professional stolen base record. Fine, he's 19. Yandel Ricardo, we talked about not too long ago, who got promoted from rookie ball to A-ball, might be number 4. He's 18 years old. He might be number 4. David Shields, who's an A-ball at 18, might be number 5. And then I want to throw a little shot out, minor league 10 seconds here, to Kendry Churio. I don't know if you're familiar with this name. I was barely familiar with his name a month ago. 17 years old, pitcher in the Dominican Summer League, who in his 4th start faced, I think, 13 batters. He hit 1, struck out 9, retired the other 3. And even more impressively, the Royals promoted him to Arizona after that start, which is almost unheard of to bring up a guy from the Dominican to America mid-season because you have to get a visa. These guys are he's 17 years old. There's a lot of cultural issues, etc. The fact that they promoted him, and the reports we're getting on this guy, the helium is ridiculous. He's up to 97. He has an incredible curveball. His first start in complex league, he struck out 8 batters in 4 innings. He's only 17. Could be anything. But I haven't heard this much promise from a Latin American arm, honestly, since like Yordano Ventura. But again, he's pitched like 6 games in his professional career. You could argue he's number 5. And then there's or number 6. And then there's Ramon Ramirez, the catcher we've talked about, who just turned 20. The point is, all the older guys who you think would be ready for the major leagues who are getting closer have all got question marks. Ben Kudrna, Luinder Avila. Like, I don't even know who else you put up at that list. I mean, Drew Beam I like, but like, I don't think the ceiling is there. So having said all that, where do you put Gamble and Hammond in there? You could make a case that these guys could rank at 3 and 4 right now. Like, would I take would I take Josh Hammond over Asbel Gonzalez? I think I would. And for the fact that the Royals weren't drafting in the top 20, it's kind of an indictment of the system that these guys would be immediately top 5 prospects in the system. But I think they're top 5 prospects in the system right now.
So where would you? I mean, you would say that they're all. It's
Well,
Jensen
yeah,
and
Hammond.
4 of them.
I would say right now, and this is extremely preliminary, but I would say Carter Jensen, Blake Mitchell, and then I'd probably put Hammond over Gamble. I would rather have Hammond over Gamble, 3 and 4. And then, like I said, I'd probably have like Asbel Gonzalez 5, then Ricardo 6, David Shields 7, Kendrick Churro 8. What's interesting, I mean, what's exciting is that like you basically have this from prospects 3 through 8 in the system are all guys who are 19 or 19 years or younger. They're all teenagers. That's exciting, but the problem, of course, is the reason they're high prospects is because they haven't had a chance to fail yet, right? Like if they all pan out, that's amazing. Their upside is immense, but the risk with those guys is enormous. And developing those guys is going to be an incredible challenge. But the point is, after Carter Jensen and Blake Mitchell, there isn't a lot of cavalry arriving in the major leagues anytime soon. This is an organization, a farm system built for 2028 and beyond. It's not really built for 2026 and 2027.
So what does that do? Now the draft is in the rearview mirror. Most of the scouting or most of the negotiating about contracts is done.
Mm-hmm.
They'll get it done pretty quick, but they shorten that deadline so that most of the negotiation will get done before the draft ever happens.
Right.
And then they'll focus on where to go with this team. So when you talk about how far away the talent is, let's throw in the fact that they lost Lorenzen to the IL for 15 days, retroactive to Friday. Where does that put this team right now?
They're in a tough spot because they're right in that.
Why is it tough? I listened to you and Lesky should get together and have bring hands with each other, because I had him on the program today, and he's like, I said, listen, Lorenzen, that's it. Like my hope is that Lorenzen pushes them to where, okay, we're clearly sellers. And he's like, Lorenzen means that much to this team. I'm like, no, he doesn't. He's a good pitcher. He's a good number 5 starter because he generally goes deep into the game. He takes the ball every 5th day. Well, now he's not taking the ball, and I don't see anybody that's going to go 5 innings into the game. And so he was talking about off days and you could get by. It's not just Lorenzen. It's Lorenzen and Reagans. It's Lorenzen and Reagans, and they still can't hit. Like it's Lorenzen and Reagans, they can't hit, and they don't beat anybody who's any good. They lose every series. Even with their little uptick, they are now, hang on, they were 4-12-1 in their last 17 series, and then they swept the Pirates 5-12. They lost the Mets 5-13-1. And what did they do? The split was with the Mariners. They're now 6-13-1 in their last 20 series. It's all that. And now they've just lost another starting pitcher. And what's the one thing you can count on with this team? They would pitch you deep into the game. They would get you into the game with a chance to win. And as soon as they got to throw Rich Hill out there for 2 1/3, a 6-run baseball, they're done. They're cooked. Like I don't understand why you don't immediately go, they have to sell. Well, you're a math guy, supposedly. Weren't you one of the founders of Baseball Prospectus? You're literally preaching hope.
Unproven rumors. I'll tell you why. I mean, and look, and I'm not saying this is what I would do. I'm saying this is how the Royals could argue it. I don't know if you saw the stat. The Royals have the easiest strength of schedule of any team in the American League from this point on.
Erroneous.
Okay. Erroneous? Why do you say erroneous?
Well, first of all, I just love the line. I think it was from Wedding Crashers where he yells, erroneous.
Okay. All right, Vince.
But here's why I will tell you. I'm just going to read the name of the teams they play. Forget about whether it's home or road. I'm just going to name the teams. Okay. And do you have the standings up in front of you?
Yeah.
Have the standings up. And you tell me if the team has a better or worse win percentage than the Royals.
Okay.
Ready? The Royals, by the way, have a 485 win percentage. So it's not god awful. It's 485. Okay. Here we go. Marlins,
The Marlins are worse.
Okay, by how much? What is it?
22 points of winning percentage. They're 44 and 51.
But they've been playing better baseball of late. They're kind of comparable to the Royals, but okay, it's worse. Cubs
Cubs are better.
Guardians.
Guardians are identical. I mean, they're tied basically.
Okay, so not easy. Not for this team. It's not.
No, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's
Braves.
also not impossible. Braves, I think, have they
Royals are
fallen off? They're worse, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 42 and 53. They're disastrous. You
Okay.
let Kevin Spacer go, that's what happens.
Blue Jays.
Blue Jays are better. Red Sox are better.
Twins
are tied, right? I think they're half a game. I'm calling that a tie.
Okay. Nationals
are worse.
Worse. Yeah, they're worse. They've fallen apart. White Sox
much worse.
Rangers
about better. The same. No, they're like one game better. I'm going to call
better.
it a tie. Okay, well,
better. Tigers
are much better.
White Sox
worse.
Tigers
better.
Angels
about the same.
Twins
about the same.
Guardians
that's the same.
Phillies
better.
Mariners
better, yeah.
Blue Jays better. Angels same.
Okay.
I mean,
they're worse.
I get it. You're going to hear, and it is. We do hear the White Sox in there.
I hear them twice. The A's to finish, like if you're eating with close, like that's a heck of a team to finish the season with. Is
right.
To go to Sacramento against a team that doesn't give a damn. I mean, look, Jack Johnson makes this point. 56 of the Royals games so far have been against teams with a winning record. They were 21 and 35. Against sub 500 teams, they've been 26 and 15. Right, so that plus 500 sub 500 record, the Royals, we've seen it. They've beaten up on bad teams. They've sucked against good teams. 41 of their last 65 games are against teams that are under 500 currently. Now, a lot of those teams are right there, 46 and 40, like the Royals. I'm not saying I would do it personally. What I'm saying is, if you're the Royals and you're like, you know what, our farm system's probably not going to help us much in 26 and 27 anyway. This might be our last chance to really be competitive, for 2 or 3 years. The temptation might be there to say, stay the course. I'm not saying I don't expect them to trade for 2025 assets, but I could certainly see them at least waiting until the very end of the deadline. Like I hope they come out of the break and they go either 6-0 or 0-6. This is the problem with this past week. This is the problem with how poorly they were in June, is that they've had back-to-back weeks where they, I think, went 4-2, right? Like if they keep stacking 4-2s, they're going to be back in the race here. But even with back-to-back good weeks, they are still under 500. Their playoff odds at Fangraphs are still like 11.5%. It was, I think, it briefly got up to 15% for like a day after they swept the Pirates. But that's like the high point they've been in terms of playoff odds over the last 6 weeks. You go back though to the end of May and they were at 40%, 42% to make the playoffs. Like June just killed them. If it were me personally, yeah, I would be seeing what I could get for Seth Lugo right now. Obviously, Lorenzen, now you're probably not going to get anything. He's not going to be back potentially before the trade deadline.
It's oblique. Nobody's messing with an oblique until
exactly.
He's good.
And because a few before, I think the last CBA in 2019, someone like Hunter Harvey, you could put on waivers at the beginning of August, even because he's not ready to pitch. And then if he comes back and he's ready to pitch, you could trade him. But the deadline now, July 31st, it's a hard deadline. So even if Hunter Harvey comes back and is like, ooh, he's throwing out, somebody wants to catch lightning in a bottle for 6 weeks, I hope he can stay healthy, you can't trade him. So, the main asset the Royals have right now is Lugo, unless they want to go crazy and trade Bubic. And I just don't think that I think that if I'm the Royals, I'm trying to get Bubic signed long term, and that frees up Lugo for a trade potentially, because I don't think you sign both of those guys to $20+ million a year contracts. I think you can do one or the other. I'd rather have Bubic for the long term. But I can see an argument the Royals would make internally that they should keep, they should try for it. I don't think that would be a wise idea. But at the very least, I would be surprised if they sell prior to the 28th, 29th of July. Like, I think they're going to come out of the break. They're probably hoping that Jack Caglione can get his swing fixed here over the All-Star break or whatever, and hope that they come out of the break and go 7-3 in their first 10 games, and suddenly they're over 500. And then they turn into last year's Tigers and just catch fire in the second half. And I wouldn't hate if they decide to just wait 10 days. But if that's the case, I hope they either go 8-2 or go 2-8, because if they come out of this stretch and they're, 52-55, they're right where they are now. And at that point, they have a decision to make. Or if they're 54-53, do you stay with it when you're a game above 500, but you're still 4 games out of a playoff spot and you have 2 other teams to catch? It seems hard. I mean, that's why something like the Fangraphs playoff odds are a very nice analytical way of looking at it.
Right.
12% is just too low to really stay in the race.
Well, let's say they get there. Are they going anywhere?
If you get into the playoffs, dude, anything can happen. I would, if I knew for sure I could make the playoffs, that would be something I would do, even if you think that you're going to be overmatched. Because look, best of 3, best of 5, anything can happen in those. And then you get past that, you're in the ALCS at that point. Like, you're in the Final Four. You've had a successful season no matter what. Yeah, so wow. I really think in baseball, the reward of a playoff spot is worth is worth it, because the odds of winning a championship, even as the last team in the dance, is so much higher than in any other sport.
By the way, I have to acknowledge this. Caleb says, just joined. Hopefully I didn't miss the discussion on how tough Jonathan India is.
Just, another reason why the Royals are where they are right now. Jonathan India has been a replacement level player.
Yeah, well, and then when he gets his hand stepped on, he can't run down.
Yeah, there's that too. That was,
and keeps Bobby Witt Jr. at second base instead of coming around to score. It cost him 2 runs.
Yeah, I mean,
I had to just like completely check myself on Friday night from just like, I waited a little bit before I tweeted. I'm like, I don't want to come firing out here right here. I might say something I regret. Like, I don't get it. Like, you come out of the game, okay. Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how bad you're hurt, but that was a rough go. That was a rough
when things are going bad, that's the sort of stuff that happens, I guess,
Yeah. He did, not the best way to endear yourself to
no.
this. All right.
No.
So, if they would move Seth Lugo, who are you starting?
Well, that's why the Lorenzen thing is, complicates things, because before that you could say, well, we move Lugo and we still have Bubic and Cameron and Waka, Lorenzen. You can fake a 5th spot, but now it's Bubic, Cameron, and Waka, and you can't run a bullpen game 2 out of every 5. Maybe you can. I mean, that's what AJ Hinch basically did with Detroit last year and down the stretch, and managed to work for them. But I'm not sure the Royals have the bullpen depth to pull that off. But if you trade Lugo, here's the thing: you could trade Lugo and not necessarily hurt the team that much this year. If you trade Lugo from a position of strength, all the excess pitching you have, and get a bat, maybe a young bat that can go into your lineup now. Like if you can get, we've talked about Owen Casey as an example here. I don't think Owen Casey is going to come up right away and be, if Jack Caglione couldn't make an impact right away, expecting Owen Casey to might be too much. But the point is, if you can go out and get like a guy who's already in the major leagues, a young hitter who can play the outfield, what he's replacing is so bad that he might help this team. Like, you might not hurt your team very much by trading Lugo. That's why, to me, if it's my decision, I'm trading Lugo, but I'm trying to trade him in part for a young major league ready hitter, which allows me to say I'm still being competitive this season. Remember, the Tigers traded Jack Flaherty last year and got better, right? And then they re-signed him after the season, which is great, but that's not even the point. The point is they traded him for prospects. But if I recall correctly, one of those prospects they stuck into their lineup. Was it Trey Sweeney? Yeah, they stuck Trey Sweeney into their lineup. He wasn't great, but he's solidified a real weak spot in their on their team. I think they'd gone in like hoping like someone like Javier Baez, who's had a magical renaissance this year, but like was killing them last year. Trey Sweeney went in and was competent, and actually, so in other words, trading Flaherty for prospects didn't actually hurt them on the field at the moment. I wonder if there's a situation where the Royals could do that. If not with the Cubs, the Astros have some, have a definite need for starting pitching. They have like 2 elite starters and nobody else. And they're looking to add a starter. The Astros have some hitters, that really intrigued me. They have a guy named Zach DeZenzo who made his debut last year. He's been on the injured list for the last 5 or 6 weeks with a hand issue, but is expected back soon. But was a really intriguing player. He was like a 12th round pick out of college, but has just done nothing but rake as a professional. And if he might be a guy you put him into a deal along with some actual prospects in the farm system, and suddenly he comes back and he's your starting left fielder the last 6 weeks of the season. He might benefit the Royals almost as much as Lugo, and then you have him for 5 more years after this. So there is a way to look to the future without really hurting your present too much. It would probably hurt the Royals if they make the playoffs to not have a starter the caliber of Lugo. I mean, that's why the Astros or the Cubs, whoever, want Lugo. It's not just to help them during the season. Those teams are already in first place. It's to make them a stronger playoff squad. But if you're the Royals, you'll trade some strength in the playoffs just for the opportunity to be there and hope that you just get incredibly lucky in October. And if you can do that while strengthening your team for the next 5 years, I think that's a move. That would be, to me, the most creative move, the most interesting move that JJ Picollo could make right now.
Yeah, 17 days. 17 days.
They're going to have to decide soon. So.
Yeah, for us for them to figure out what it is they are, what they've got, and what they're going to do. And, a lot of frameworks are laid out. Everyone knows where everyone else is right now, what they're looking for. So now they just got to go out and execute a plan.
Well,
sitting. Will you be upset if they neither buy nor sell?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, like I said, I'd rather they do this. I'd rather they buy and sell than not buy and not sell.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, we've talked about this so many times. Dayton Moore would have not bought and not sold. I think JJ might buy and sell, right? He might go the other way. I'm hoping that he does, unless he just decides, we got to punt and just sell and not buy at all, which I think would be completely defensible at this point. But if he decides he doesn't want to give up on 2025 completely, I think there is a way to do that while still cashing in some present assets for future assets. Because I do think this team, the way the farm system is constructed right now, this team needs a little bit of help if they want to be competitive in 2026 and 2027, because there just isn't a lot of close to the majors ready talent along the way. I mean, look, Brian Sweeney, maybe he is a magician, and maybe Ben Kudrna and Luinder Avila turn into like starting pitchers next year, and Alec Marsh comes back and they just keep rolling with this rotation. Like I put nothing past Sweeney at this point. But even if they do, I'm still not sure where the offense comes from. Right? Like where are the hitters, the major league ready hitters in this system aside from Carter Jensen? I just don't see it. The outfield, you're expecting Caglione not just to stay in the outfield, but to like start hitting. And beyond that, Gavin Cross is not walking through that door, Soren.
Well, and thankfully, so to be honest.
Exactly. So maybe Nick Lofton, finally breaks out. Maybe Cam Devaney, if he ever gets onto the field, maybe he turns into somebody. These are wishes. These are not realistic expectations. I really do like the talent in the low minors, but that's 2 or 3 years away at a bare minimum. So the Royals have to do something if they want to be competitive next year, the year after, and trading a guy like Lugo might be the way to do that.
If you need to do something about your insurance, our friend David Starnes just had lunch with David, by the way, last week. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance, not just about fender benders. Beyond traditional safeguards, you can enjoy perks like roadside assistance for unexpected breakdowns, transportation expense coverage, auto replacement protection to keep you on the road in style. Call David and his crew at 816-781-7331. Our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's best. One contractor, all things parking lot. Don't let your business be dragged down because of liability issues in your parking lot. Whatever it might be, whether it's striping it, building a new lot, you name it, Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. Northland Injury Law is Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, voted Kansas City's #1 accident lawyers, serving Kansas City for more than 40 years. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222 or call 816-400-HURT and Whataburger. for a limited time. All your favorites are back. The Pico de Gallo burger, sweet and spicy bacon burger, the patty melt, the honey barbecue chicken strip sandwich, the banana pudding shake. You can get them all. Remember, Whataburger's open 24 hours a day, and they serve breakfast, thankfully so, from 11 p to 11 a. It's at your local Whataburger. For the good doctor, Rany Jazayerli, I'm Soren Petro, saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Kaufman Corner.